The chain of supplements. The discovery of the dangerous supplement will be next cited among these follies, but it will still retain a privilege. Rousseau evokes it after the others and as a sort of explanation of the state inconceivable to reason. For it is not the question of diverting total enjoyment toward a particular substitute, but now of experiencing it or miming it directly and in its totality. It is no longer a question of kissing the bed, the floor, the curtains, the furniture, etc., not even of swallowing the piece that she had put into her mouth, but of disposing of the whole sex as one desire s. I remarked that the stage of this theater was not only a setting in the generally understood sense, an ensemble of accessories. The topographic disposition of the experience is not unimportant. Jean-Jacques is in the house of Madame de Warens, close enough to Mamma to see her and to nourish his imagination upon her, but with the possibility of a partition. It is at the moment when the mother disappears that substitution becomes possible and necessary. The play of maternal presence or absence, this alteration of perception and imagination must correspond to an organization of space. The text argues as follows: add to this habit the circumstances of my position, living as I was with a beautiful woman, caressing her image in the bottom of my heart, seeing her continually throughout the day, surrounded in the evening by objects which reminded me of her, sleeping in the bed in which I knew she had slept. What causes for excitement? Many a reader, who reflects upon them, no doubt already considers me as half dead. Quite the contrary, that which ought to have destroyed me was just the thing that saved me, at least for a time. Intoxicated with the charm of living with her, with the ardent desire of spending my life with her, I always saw in her, whether she were absent or present, a tender mother, a beloved sister, a delightful friend, and nothing more. She was for me the only woman in the world, and the extreme sweetness of the feelings with which she inspired me did not allow my senses time to awake for others, and protected me against her and all her sex. This experience was not an event marking an archaic or adolescent period. Not only did it construct or sustain a particular hidden foundation, an edifice of significations. It remained an active obsession whose present is constantly reactivated and constituted in its turn, until the end of Jean-Jacques Rousseau's life and text. A little later, a little further on in the text of the Confessions, Book 4, 7, a little incident, which I find some difficulty in relating, po 150 is related to us. The encounter with a man addicted to the same vice. Terrified, Jean-Jacques runs away, trembling as if he had just committed a crime. The recollection of this incident cured me of it for a long time, po 151. For a long time. Rousseau will never stop having recourse to, and accusing himself of, this onanism that permits one to be himself affected by providing himself with presences, by summoning absent beauties. In his eyes it will remain the model of vice and perversion. Affecting oneself by another presence, one corrupts oneself, makes oneself other by oneself en alter soi-même. Rousseau neither wishes to think nor can think that this alteration does not simply happen to the self, that it is the self's very origin. He must consider it a contingent evil coming from without to affect the integrity of the subject. But he cannot give up what immediately restores to him the other desired presence, no more than one can give up language. This is why, in this respect as well, as he says in the Dialogues P. L. Euroyad, Vol. 1, p. 800, to the end of his life he will remain an aged child. The restitution of presence by language, restitution at the same time symbolic and immediate. This contradiction must be thought. Immediate experience of restitution because as experience, as consciousness, or conscience, it dispenses with passage through the world. What is touching is touched, auto-affection gives itself as pure autarky. If the presence that it then gives itself is the substitutive symbol of another presence, it has never been possible to desire that presence in person before this play of substitution and this symbolic experience of auto-affection. The thing itself does not appear outside of the symbolic system that does not exist without the possibility of auto-affection. Experience of immediate restitution, also because it does not wait. It is satisfied then and there and in the moment. If it waits, it is not because the other makes it wait. Pleasure seems no longer to be deferred. Why give oneself so much trouble in a hope remote from so poor and uncertain a success, when one can, from the very instant? Dialogues. But what is no longer deferred is also absolutely deferred. The presence that is thus delivered to us in the present is a chimera. Auto-affection is a pure speculation. The sign, the image, the representation, which come to supplement the absent presence are the illusions that sidetrack us. To culpability, to the anguish of death and castration, is added or rather is assimilated the experience of frustration. Donner i.e. change sidetracking or, giving money, in whatever sense it is understood, this expression describes the recourse to the supplement admirably. In order to explain his dislike for common prostitutes, Rousseau tells us that in Venice, at 31, the propensity which had modified all my passions, Confessions, p. 41, po 358 has not disappeared, I had not lost the pernicious habit of satisfying my wants. Donner i.e. change, p. 316, po 289 the enjoyment of the thing itself is thus undermined, in its act and in its essence, by frustration. One cannot therefore say that it has an essence or an act, eidos, ousia, energia, etc. Something promises itself as it escapes, gives itself as it moves away, and strictly speaking it cannot even be called presence. Such is the constraint of the supplement, such, exceeding all the language of metaphysics, is this structure almost inconceivable to reason. Almost inconceivable, simple irrationality, the opposite of reason, are less irritating and waylaying for classical logic. The supplement is maddening because it is neither presence nor absence and because it consequently breaches both our pleasure and our virginity. Abstinence and enjoyment, pleasure and wisdom, escape me in equal measure, Confessions, p. 12. Are things not complicated enough? The symbolic is the immediate, presence is absence, the non-deferred is deferred, pleasure is the menace of death. But one stroke must still be added to the system, to this strange economy of the supplement. In a certain way, it was already legible. A terrifying menace, the supplement is also the first and surest protection, against that very menace. This is why it cannot be given up. And sexual auto-affection, that is auto-affection in general, neither begins nor ends with what one thinks can be circumscribed by the name of masturbation. The supplement has not only the power of procuring an absent presence through its image, procuring it for us through the proxy procuration of the sign, it holds it at a distance and masters it. For this presence is at the same time desired and feared. The supplement transgresses and at the same time respects the interdict. This is what also permits writing as the supplement of speech, but already also the spoken word as writing in general. Its economy exposes and protects us at the same time according to the play of forces and of the differences of forces. Thus, the supplement is dangerous in that it threatens us with death, but Rousseau thinks that it is not at all as dangerous as cohabitation with women. Pleasure itself, without symbol or subtletory, that which would accord us, to, pure presence itself, if such a thing were possible, would be only another name for death. Rousseau says enjoyment. Is such a thing made for man? If I had ever in my life tasted the delights of love even once in their plenitude, I do not imagine that my frail existence would have been sufficient for them, I would have been dead in the act. Confessions, Book 8. If one abides by the universal evidence, by the necessary and a priori value of this proposition in the form of a sigh, one must immediately recognize that cohabitation with women, heteroeroticism, can be lived, effectively, really, as one believes it can be said, only through the ability to reserve within itself its own supplementary protection. In other words, between autoeroticism and heteroeroticism, there is not a frontier but an economic distribution. It is within this general rule that the differences are mapped out. This is Rousseau's general rule. And before trying what I do not pretend to be doing here to encompass the pure singularity of Rousseau's economy or his writing, we must carefully raise and articulate between them all the structural or essential necessities on their different levels of generality. It is from a certain determined representation of cohabitation with women that Rousseau had to have recourse throughout his life to that type of dangerous supplement that is called masturbation and that cannot be separated from his activity as a writer. To the end. Therese, the Therese of whom we can speak, Therese in the text, whose name and life belong to the writing we read, experienced it at her cost. In Book 12 of the Confessions, at the moment when I must speak without reserve, the two reasons combined of certain resolutions is confided to us, I am speak without reserve. I have never concealed either my poor mamma's faults or my own. I must not show greater favor to Therese either, and, pleased as I am to render honor to one who is so dear to me, neither do I wish to conceal her faults, if so be that an involuntary change in the H's affections is really a fault. I had long since observed that her affection for me had cooled. I was conscious again of an unpleasantness, the effects of which I had formerly felt when with mamma, and the effect was the same with Therese. Let us not look for perfections which are not to be found in nature, it would be the same with any other woman whatsoever. My situation, however, was at that time the same, and even aggravated by the animosity of my enemies, who only sought to find me at fault. I was afraid of a repetition, and, not desiring to run the risk of it, I preferred to condemn myself to strict continence, than to expose Therese to the risk of finding herself in the same condition again. Besides, I had observed that intercourse with women distinctly aggravated my ill health. These two reasons combined caused me to form resolutions which I had sometimes been very inconsistent in keeping, but in which I had persevered with greater firmness for the last 3 or 4 years, p. 59-5, pages 616-17j. In the manuscript to Paris, a fear distinctly aggravated my ill health. W.E. read, the corresponding vice, O.F. which I have never been able to cure myself completely, appear to me to produce less injurious results. These two reasons combined. 9. This perversion consists of preferring the sign and protects me from mortal expenditure. To be sure. But this apparently egotistical economy also functions within an entire system of moral representation. Egotism is redeemed by a culpability, which determines autoeroticism as a fatal waste and a wounding of the self by the self. But as I thus harm only myself, this perversion is not truly condemnable. Rousseau explains it in more than one letter. Thus, with that exception and the exception of vices that have always done harm to me alone, I can expose to all eyes a life irreproachable in all the secrets of my heart, to M. de Saint Germain, 2-26-7 I have great vices, but they have never harmed anyone but me, to M. Lenoir, 1-15-72. 10 Jean-Jacques could thus look for a supplement to Therese only on one condition, that the system of supplementarity in general be already open in its possibility, that the play of substitutions be already operative for a long time and that in a certain way Therese herself be already a supplement. As mamma was already the supplement of an unknown mother, and as the true mother herself, at whom the known psychoanalyses of the case of Jean-Jacques Rousseau stop, was also in a certain way a supplement, from the first trace, and even if she had not truly died in giving birth. Here is the chain of supplements. The name mamma already designates one, my Therese. I am only too happy to possess you, modest and healthy, and not to find what I never looked for. The question is of maidenhood pucelage J which Therese has just confessed to have lost in innocence and by accident. J At first I had only sought amusement, I now saw that I had found more and gained a companion. A little intimacy with this excellent girl, a little reflection upon my situation, made me feel that, while thinking only of my pleasures, I had done much to promote my happiness. To supply the place of my extinguished ambition, I needed a lively sentiment which should take complete possession of literally fill my heart. In a word, I needed a successor to mamma. As I should never live with her again, I wanted someone to live with her pupil, in whom I might find the simplicity and docility of H which she had found in me. I felt it necessary that the gentle tranquility of private and domestic life should make up to me for the loss of the brilliant career which I was renouncing. When I was quite alone, I felt a void in my heart, which it only needed another heart to fill. Destiny had deprived me of, or, at least in part, alienated me from, that heart for which nature had formed me. From that moment I was alone, for with me it has always been everything or nothing. I found in Therese the substitute supplement that I needed. L1 Through the sequence of supplements a necessity is announced, that of an infinite chain, ineluctably multiplying the supplementary mediations that produce the sense of the very thing they defer, the mirage of the thing itself, of immediate presence, of originary perception. Immediacy is derived. That all begins through the intermediary is what is indeed inconceivable to reason.